Thunderbolts was so close to being perfect. It tells a surprisingly in-depth story about loneliness, it makes you feel for characters that previously felt like an afterthought, and it serves as a great lead-in to Avengers Doomsday. But Julia Louis-Dreyfus's character Valentina Allegra de Fontaine is so out of place in this movie, and I can't believe more people aren't talking about this. This film is getting praised like it's one of the best Marvel movies since Endgame, but the main villain may as well be a mustache-twirling cartoon character that completely contrasts the tone of the rest of the film. And for me, this character became really hard to look past when judging this film as a whole because her terrible plan is integral to how the story plays out. So I wanted to break down why I feel so strongly about this character, and then at the end of the video I'll talk about why the rest of the film is so good that it almost makes up for this one big blunder. But first, make sure to like this video and subscribe if you loved Thunderbolts. Okay, so if you've seen some of the more recent Marvel projects, chances are you've run into Valentina Allegra de Fontaine before. There was a lot of hype behind this character, as she was built up to be a shadier version of Nick Fury, assembling her own team of agents across multiple shows and movies. Before this film, she was in 3 other MCU projects, and the piecemeal they were feeding us fans was exciting. And now, having seen Thunderbolts, I can't believe how inept they made her character. She's the director of the CIA, and she starts the film having to wipe her shady dealings clean because she's undergoing an impeachment trial. But actually no, it's not her that's in charge of this monumental process, it's her assistant, who's in her mid-20s. Now I ask you, in what world would the director of the CIA have an assistant that is fresh out of college? This already would never happen in the real world, but what makes it worse is that her assistant Mel has so much responsibility. I know that there should always be some suspension of disbelief in Marvel movies, but if the rest of the movie is going for this grounded, nuanced tone, I can't let poor decisions like this slide. Their dynamic made me take this duo much less seriously, which is a shame because the impact that they have on the story is so vast. The first conversation they have together sets up the latest assignment that Valentina sends out to Yelena, John Walker, Ghost, and Taskmaster. And we learn that Val's plan was to send all of her dirty agents to kill each other, then lock them in a room and try to incinerate them. Which in itself is already kind of dumb, but it gets monumentally more dumb when you learn the power bank that inhibits Ghost's powers is kept inside the room they're trying to escape from. I also love the fact that Valentina asks this fresh college grad assistant of hers to press the button that will murder 4 people. Like, this movie just portrays Valentina as this oblivious buffoon who isn't actually as good at manipulating people as they want us to think she is. So obviously none of our heroes die in that room except for Taskmaster, and they actually start working together to escape. And the next scene with Valentina and Mel feels like the writers are trying to be self-aware with how bad the plan was, but it doesn't land. When Valentina learns they escaped, she sarcastically asks how they could have gotten out of her quote-unquote supposedly impenetrable fortress. And when Mel hints that they might be working together, Valentina, as if in a slapstick comedy troupe trying to set up a punchline, says, "I couldn't think of a worse group of people to work together." To which Mel responds, "They're working together." Every line that comes out of these characters' mouths just feels like it's for cheap laughs. It's like they're in an entirely different movie than the rest of the cast. After Mel finds out that Bob was from the Sentry Project and Valentina tells her to never gasp at work because Marvel can't resist a good quip, they fly over to the underground facility and attempt to catch the characters she failed to kill. And the following scenes are awesome. Bob invading the brain of Walker, them failing as a team since they all have their own motivations. It's thematically great stuff. It's moments like this when I was watching and I was reminded, oh yeah, this is actually a really good movie. So the gang escapes, Bob gets lit up and discovers his powers, and we move into the next act of the movie where Bucky helps the team walk the path toward redemption. Unfortunately, intercut with this coming-of-age plot for our main heroes, we get the Valentina scenes where she's trying to convince Bob that she's the only one who believes in him, that she knows everything about him and still wants him. And before I rip into these scenes, I actually think the logic tracks. I think this is something that someone in Bob's position would want to hear, but I think the way that Valentina goes about convincing him is very surface level, and any actual person listening to her would be able to determine that she's only in it for selfish reasons. Also, these scenes are written in such a way where there's no part of your brain that believes this is going to go well. In my opinion, the best Marvel villains are the ones that actually feel like a threat because they can feasibly achieve the things they're setting out to do. And if after these scenes you felt like Valentina had successfully enlisted a loyal super soldier stronger than all of the Avengers to her cause, that would feel menacing, like there were actual stakes. But you as the audience know without the shadow of a doubt that Valentina's plan is going to backfire. And worst of all, that the movie is going to treat it like a shock when it happens. And what would you know, 5 minutes after the Thunderbolts ask questions about Sentry's hair, he turns against Valentina. And this in itself is not a bad story decision. In fact, I think it's the right story decision to have Sentry turn against Val. But if it were an actual surprise, if it wasn't extremely predictable because of Valentina's inability to actually manipulate people, I would be all for it. And that's why I can't fault this movie too much, because at the end of the day, it does make the right decisions. Even if I don't like how the Void gets unleashed, having the Void become unleashed was still awesome to witness, and I'm glad we got to see it. But the connective tissue throughout this movie just weakens it ever so slightly for me. But I can't deny that Yelena breaking down in front of Alexei was one of the best displays of acting I've seen in a Marvel movie. And I love how Alexei takes the worst she can throw at him and still gets through to her with his own tenderness, allowing both of them to heal. I think the message that sometimes friends are the only ones who can save you from yourself is so powerful in that last sequence where Bob can't stop punching his darker half. And I actually felt proud of these characters when they received claps from the citizens they saved. But this movie doesn't end there. The movie ends with Valentina conning the Thunderbolts into a press conference where she announces them as the new Avengers. And when I first saw this, I was like, wouldn't the reporters who had assembled for Valentina's speech be a little more concerned with the fact that they just turned into literal shadow creatures than with reporting the news 30 seconds after they returned to their physical bodies? Probably, but I'll let it slide. As for what transpires after the announcement, I feel like Yelena or Ghost would walk over to the mic and be like, actually, Valentina created the guy that just collapsed that crane and almost killed all of you. But I suppose that these characters were all looking for clean slates anyway, and becoming validated as the new Avengers does achieve that. I don't know, it all ended a bit too conveniently for me. But again, I do believe this was the right story decision. I love the fact that someone gave them the keys to the castle even if they're not as capable or trustworthy as the public thinks they are. I just think the road was a bit bumpy getting there. At the end of the day, I think this movie could have been a 9 out of 10. It operates on a deeper level than most Marvel films. It has something to say, and it connects to the rest of the MCU in a fun, unexpected way. But I can't overlook that the plot hinges so heavily on a terrible plan from an even more terrible character who takes me out of the movie with every scene she's in. So in reality, I'd probably give this movie a 7. But even though this video isn't all positive, I left the theater excited because this ending opens up so many possibilities. I wonder how useful the Thunderbolts will be in the upcoming fight against Doctor Doom. Will they actually contribute in a major way, or will they take a back seat when our main heroes like Thor and Captain America return? I want them to be handled with care and not just shoved to the side. I just hope that Valentina has next to no role within Avengers Doomsday because I don't want her to cheapen the stakes like she did in this film. I really don't hold that as a major concern though, because I feel like the Russos know what they're doing, but anything's possible in this day and age for Marvel. Let me know how you think the Thunderbolts will get used in Avengers Doomsday, and also please like this video and subscribe if you agree with me here. I still got a lot out of this movie, and I hope you did too. Thanks so much for watching and have a good one.